Global or linear thinking, which is better for trading? Ever since I entered the field, I had this idea in my head that you would need to have certain personality traits in order to be good at this. I figured that a person would really need to be good at math for one, and I am one of those people that always said, I'm not a numbers person. So I didn't even really consider anything for a career that involved numbers by any stretch of the imagination. I would listen to Timothy Sykes and the other mentors and other people on YouTube or in chat rooms or whatnot, and they'd be prattling on and on about the numbers of remembering form numbers to read, how to do the math to find the float, how to do the math to find your risk to reward ratio, what numbers are good and bad for a company in this part of their business, and so on and so on. I'd also figured that I would need to be really good at retaining names and ticker symbols and analyst websites. I really didn't know if I could learn all of this. It was a lot of information, and my brain had never really held on to this much, not even in school. At this point in my life, I really felt like it was better for me to try and fail than to not try at all. And funny enough, turns out these things are not necessary to be good at trading. The whole concept was really daunting at first, I'm not gonna lie. I would listen to all these seasoned traders, and I'd have to write down words so that I could look them up later so I understood what they were saying. In fact, to this day, I write myself a lot of sticky notes to remind myself of what I had just learned or concepts that I need reminding of. Like most things we attempt in life, the learning curve is really front-weighted. So once we're past a certain point, we're really going to find that we have maintained a decent amount of information that will aid us in future trading. Honestly, you just kind of find that you pick up on the jargon, the ticker symbols, the sectors, the business names, all of those things. You pick up on that over time with experience and with immersing yourself in the field by paper trading and regular trading alike. You'll find that this exposure helps all these things stick, whether or not your studies helped them stick the first time or even the 10th time. So back to this concept. There are two kinds of thinkers, global and linear. A global thinker, you can think in terms of they see the forest before the trees, and the linear is the opposite of that. They see the trees before the forest. In other words, a global thinker digests information as a whole, as a concept, and as the big picture. And a linear thinker will digest it in small chunks, and usually in a linear fashion or a straight line. So if something happens and that leads to this, that is how they digest and understand it, is in that order. I am personally a global thinker, and my husband is actually a linear thinker. I don't keep the nitty-gritty details or the timelines very well of my experiences, so I can't really willingly retrieve this information without some sort of prompt from a person or a situation that is happening. This causes problems with me and my husband and our communication because he can recall those details, and if he asks me about a specific example for something, I will often have difficulty with that, but I can retrieve the general idea and the point of the situation and the conclusion of a conversation. So knowing that we've been able to more easily understand each other and to work with what we are capable of doing. Noticing this difference in yourself actually will also help you with trading and how you can achieve the same things. I also don't have an eidetic memory or a photographic memory. I can't recall things picture perfect. I'm terrible with names, dates, timelines, and this made memorizing long lists of words in English and definitions and remembering timelines for history class in school really miserable for me. The only way I could actually accomplish this was to study right beforehand and to go in and take the test and I would promptly forget everything afterwards. I can definitely read a book and remember the point. I think my brain just feels like the point is the most important thing. Why take up all this space with all of this other stuff if I can prioritize the main point? It does mean I have to work a little harder to do certain things with trading, but it doesn't mean that I'm not good for trading. I'm also more of an artistic mind over a logical one. I can see the chart patterns really well because they're a picture, as long as my emotions are in check, of course. I do operate in life by watching a situation and the people in them. I can learn vicariously, but often I find myself needing to be thrust into a similar situation and feel what it's like to be there. In trading, this is how we have to learn. We have to be thrown into the situation to really have a comprehensive look into what it's like to be there. We can't just paper trade and be good traders. That switch to the new mentality of having real money at risk is actually one of those things that people are very shocked by. That was part of the reason that I blew up my first account, is that the emotion of that is something you really can't prepare for with paper trading. Part of the reason why we have to actually experience trading is because trading is a feeling sort of situation in addition to the logic. As I've mentioned before, the reason the market moves is almost entirely based on emotion, fear and greed of everyone involved. My husband is actually a literal genius. He was tested and his IQ is that high. What he has a difficult time with is that he fixates on the shoulds. So the technicals need to work out a certain way, or he needs to execute a certain way. He has a really hard time accepting that he is an emotional being and therefore is going to be fallible. Mistakes hit him harder because in hindsight, he can really see the logical part of it. He sees exactly what the pattern was telling him, but the problem is there was no pattern in that moment. There was a pattern post-trading that situation. But because you can look at it in hindsight and go, oh, yep, that's what happened, and yeah, it bounced there, and oh yeah, that was a perfect support or resistance point. You think that it's going to work perfectly, but it just is different in the actual experience itself. Hindsight gives you this illusion that it's just super simple because it's just patterns and catalysts and support and resistance. My husband also feels this intense need to crunch data, and if he does that, then it's just going to give him all this information. I find that's not really true because of the market shifts. These data crunching sessions may or may not give you any actual information about the situation or what you're going to come up against in the future. On the flip side, I will absolutely have to revisit a concept several times before I really get my grasp around it. The idea of risk to reward ratios, that was something I took embarrassingly long to even address. I did pretty much everything else but that. It was because of my personality where I tried to avoid the hardest thing, at least on some level. Sometimes it's subconscious, but I definitely did that here. It was one of those things that if I had just focused and leaned into the hardest thing at the beginning, I probably would be farther along at this point. Do yourself a favor and lean into the hardest thing that you are facing, the thing that doesn't come naturally to your brain, and it will help you move forward in leaps and bounds much faster than you would if you just put that off. I'm not going to say that my personality is the best one or the worst one. I am just as likely to become successful as any other person, as long as I am willing to tackle those parts that are holding me back. I've learned more about trading and this whole world than I ever thought possible at this point. I may never be able to go to a conference or speak in front of people and talk about the nitty-gritty and answer all of these really specific questions, but that doesn't matter. That's not my journey. That's not my path. Having a different path than other people is absolutely acceptable.